Uh, I was born 1946 in Sudan, and studied all school. I went to University of Khartoum, where I graduated in law. And my interest has always been about what I call public law, constitutional, criminal, criminology, and so on. And I remember that particular influence that I had in early life is that the professor who taught me constitutional law was an American. He was a fresh graduate or recent graduate of Yale Law School who came to Sudan as the local representative of the Ford Foundation. And being short on faculty, the law school invited him to teach, so he taught us the full course of American constitutional law, including a case book and everything. So I was really excited and inspired by that. And so I finished law school, and then I was recruited by the law school to come for training in Britain and go back to Sudan to teach. Because the University of Khartoum was in the post-independence period looking to indigenize its faculty. So when I went to Britain, I went to Cambridge for 2 years and to Edinburgh for 3. The 2 years at Cambridge was in public law. That's I had the LLB in public law, which was the degree, a postgraduate degree in Cambridge. And then I did criminology also. When I went to Edinburgh, I did criminal law / criminal justice in comparative terms, comparing American, Scottish, and English law. It was specifically on the pre-trial criminal procedure. So it was the most constitutionally loaded aspect of the criminal process. And I was always admired tremendously the jurisprudence of the American Supreme Court in the 40s, 50s, 60s, in building this wealth and reverence. I mean, it's difficult to see it now, but at the time, many people like myself who are fresh graduates and African or Muslims, I am an African Muslim, so both aspects apply to me. How inspired we were, how totally engrossed in the power of jurisprudence and justices is explaining and elaborating on the Constitution, and some level of invention of constitutional doctrine about privacy, for example, and so on. So when I finished my PhD, I went back to teach in Sudan. And in Sudan, I was part of a religious movement called, we were named just after the teacher that we followed. His name was Mahmoud Muhammad Taha. And he was a teacher in the sense of a grand master of jurisprudence and Sufi doctrine and so on, and discipline. And he was also very liberal, and therefore he reinforced my commitment to this doctrine of public law and accountability and transparency and all of these ideas. And because I lived in the United States quite a bit of time. I mean, the first time I came to the US was 1981. I had a fellowship at Columbia Law School in human rights. I came for a year with my wife and kids, and we went back home to Sudan. Then when I went back 2-3 years later, I was arrested with other members of our group because we opposed the application of Sharia by the state, and because we opposed the continuation of the civil war in the South. So I spent about 18 months in prison, and when I was released with the rest of the group, I came out of Sudan to come to Columbia Law School, or rather Columbia University, because that's where I had my fellowship, and I had contacts and friends. And from there, I went to UCLA, where I taught for 2 years as a visiting professor, and that's where I taught human rights, international law, and the same subjects that I'm teaching at Emory for a very long time. That was in the mid-80s. Uh, but then there was a time when I left. I went to Canada. I went to Sweden. I was exiled, but I did not seek asylum. Some fortunately, because I kept getting academic appointments, I was able to go to Canada, go to Sweden, go to Egypt, Cairo, waiting for things to improve in Sudan that I can go back and resume my life as teaching at the University of Khartoum. But it never did. Things went worse and worse. The Islamists took over the state by a military coup in 1989, and things really went into tremendous collapse of all our institutions, education, judicial, diplomatic, everything was collapsing. So then I came back to the US in 1992 to work in Human Rights Watch. I was the director of Human Rights Watch Africa.